initiatives to speak to the issues which impact the world, and it is guided by a declaration known as the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, I think, which was passed in 1945. It's a fairly old organization, but it's a very important one because it speaks to the social, political, and economic issues which impact the world. The Bahamas is one of many states which is a member, the state is a member of the United Nations. So the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is a member state, and we have all the rights and privileges of United Nations members. Now, I did a degree in international relations many, many years ago, so I'm fairly well versed in how it works. One of the most important things about it is that it seeks to ensure that if a country is in harm's way, that the United Nations as a body mobilizes to help. So if you find that the Secretary General of the United Nations has decided to visit the Bahamas, it was sufficiently serious enough for him to come here because he felt that the issue of that Dorian strike was important. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you the question. Why would he visit the Bahamas in 2019? Because of a hurricane strike. You have to ask yourself that question. Keep that in your mind. Remember our telephone number today. If you want to send me a message, 465-0131. If you want to row with me, take issue with me, agree with me, 465-0131. If you want otherwise to contact us, we are on Facebook. Contact us, feel free, and stay in touch with us. But he came to the Bahamas to visit and to talk about the things which impacts our nation. Now, he does not do that when it comes to simple hurricanes. Hurricanes are by-the-mill events, run-of-the-mill events. They happen regularly. They are called typhoons in the east and they're called hurricanes in the west. But they are circular fans which seek to readjust the Earth's temperature level, cool the atmosphere, etc., etc., etc. As I explained in another show, they are very important. So they exist, and they've existed before really, well, at the beginning of time. They've been around for as long as we know. They are absolutely essential. But the politics of these storms has changed over the last few years. In a period known as the Anthropocene, Anthropocene. I'm gonna let the producer write it down for you. It's called the Anthropocene. That period of time when human beings began to actually impact the atmosphere and the world in which they lived. The Anthropocene. The Anthropocene. We're gonna post that for you in a minute. It's important you know that because if you know that, then you'll understand what I'm about to say. Look the word up. Anthropocene, the Anthropocene. And for those of you who want to look it up, please look it up, and if you have any comments, share with me, because I want as many comments today as possible. But in this Anthropocene, some things have been happening to the Earth's core, the Earth's temperature levels. And this thing got nothing to do with the Bible. In fact, those of you who live in the biblical text right now, you're really trying to dumb down this conversation. It has everything to do with what has been happening to the Earth since human beings began to assert a dominant role on the planet. You see, as long as we were living and complying and working with nature, with Mother Nature, the great power of Mother Nature, there were no difficulties. Human beings lived in peace with Mother Nature. But since we began to actually use certain chemicals, exploit the Earth's atmosphere in a particular way, deal with greenhouse gases, etc., 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 new things have been happening to the Earth's core and to the Earth's atmosphere. First, we've been heating up the Earth's atmosphere. We've been heating up the Earth's atmosphere in a very, very, very obvious way. In fact, I think it was first mentioned in 1970 at an international conference, that the action of human beings, the action of human beings as it impacted the Earth, our Mother Earth, is having or was having a negative effect. That was identified since the 1970s. 2019, climate change has become a serious reality. A serious reality. And today's focus is on the climate. In the aftermath of Dorian, the arrival of the United Nations Secretary General, what does this mean? Now, if those of you who follow me on Facebook will see that I wrote an article about a few weeks ago, which talked about the Anthropocene, which talked about climate change, and which talked about the fact that I did not feel that two former prime ministers could do anything for us because they never believed in climate change, to the point where their policy initiatives were directed towards addressing it for this nation as a whole. Now, we ourselves, by ourselves, cannot challenge the destructive way in which the Earth's temperature and the Earth's core and the Earth's atmosphere is being destroyed. There's no question that big nations that belch out carbon, abusive fossil fuel gases are having the worst effect and the worst impact on our climate. There's no question that as a small nation, there's only so much we can do. But we can speak, we can agitate, especially in the United States, because it is said that with the climate changes which are taking place to the Earth's atmosphere, the first impacted will be the small nations of the global south. Let me repeat that. The first impacted nations with the climate change will be the small nations of the global south. That's very important, because if you understand that the global south is where these climate change initiatives or these climate change events will impact the human race even more so, then it is in the area where we live that we will feel it more so. The reason why the United Nations Secretary General came is because he wanted to see it in real time. So he left his office in New York and he flew into the Bahamas. He met with the government. He toured the facilities locally, and he also traveled to Abaco and Grand Bahama to visually identify one of the greatest examples of the damage that climate change is doing to the earth, to the world. Now, it is important that you understand as we go on with this conversation that you must understand and you must appreciate that when I talk about climate change, I'm talking about climate change in all its various forms. Right now, as we speak, the core of ice at the North Pole is beginning to melt faster than was anticipated. The Earth's sea levels are rising faster than people have anticipated. There's been flooding in places where there was never flooding before, faster than human beings have ever anticipated. Beach erosion is taking place, especially for countries of the global south, in areas which have never took place before. Sea level temperatures are so high now that monster, massive, deadly hurricanes are beginning now to blow through as they seek to cool the Earth's atmosphere. You see, the stronger the hurricane has a direct relationship to the need for Mother Earth to use more stringent methods, stronger methods to cool the Earth's temperature, the Earth's seas. You see, when the seas get hot during the summer, to facilitate the change of season and also to cool the Earth's core, hurricanes are necessary fans to cool the Earth's atmosphere. But if the Earth's atmosphere is more hot, then Mother Nature has to create and build bigger hurricanes to cool the Earth's temperature. Listen to what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. Mother Earth sends those hurricanes, not God and not the devil. Please, do not confuse the science with the myth, with the mythology of where hurricanes come from. So, hurricanes come from essentially the need by Mother Earth to cool the Earth's atmosphere. They have become bigger, more powerful, and of course, consequently, more dangerous because the temperature levels of the seas have risen so high. And unfortunately, guess which country? Guess which country is smack dab in the middle of the hurricane zone in the Western world? The Bahamas. We are in Hurricane Alley. So chances are, if they come, we amongst other countries in this region will feel them first and feel them most. So that's the lengthy way of introducing the show today. But I want to deal with some things that the United Nations chief spoke to, because it's important that we do that. And in the second part of the show, I'm going to deal with something which is more local, because a pernicious evil is setting in this country, and I have to share this. And I'm glad for those of you who are watching the show that you understand the point I'm trying to make. A pernicious evil. Yet again, in this country, we want to blame others for the problems that we are facing. And this poisonous lie which is being pushed, which suggests that somehow Haitians and quote-unquote voodoo or Aubert is responsible for the so-called ravages of the hurricane are being pushed up and down and around the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Unfortunately, we see it too often on social media. Unfortunately, and we're not going to go there yet. Unfortunately, we see it on too many forums which seek to blame hurricanes coming through the Bahamas on a people or on a devil. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have a right to your point of view. You have a right to your belief system. But I disagree. I think that Mother Nature and the science of hurricanes can explain the deadliness, the strength, the power, the force, the force of these recent hurricanes. And they have nothing to do with voodoo. They have nothing to do with Aubert. And they have nothing to do with the fury of God. But that's a view that some people hold, that I disagree with. Having said that, the General Secretary of the United Nations came and he said a number of things. And I'm going to just take some time today and deal with some of the things that he says. And I want to put this into the public record, because it's going to be important on the second half of the show that we must understand that I'm trying to disabuse you, those who watch the show, of the poison and the filth that's coming from the mouths of people. And that you must see as poison and filth. when it comes to explaining and blaming people for the ills of our society. Isn't it ironic that we are the only people on the planet who blame ourselves for our own scientific or things which can be explained scientifically, but the first thing we do by reflex is to go and blame the poorest or the weakest amongst us. Isn't that typical? Isn't that typical? Even the Haitians and Haitian Bahamians are now being blamed for Hurricane Dorian. I mean, come on, man. But then let's just before we go there, I just want to read a few things that the Secretary General had to say. And I quote, he said, I just came back from Abaco, and I must say that I was horrified. He said, I've never seen such a level of systematic devastation. The Hurricane Dorian has been classified as a Category 5. And he said, I think it is a hell. These are his words. These are his words. I think it is a hell. Category hell. Now he said that, and he went on to say, but it was not powered by evil. But it was not powered by the devil. Sorry, the devil. The Secretary General continued, the Dorian was unlike previous storms because it was powered by climate change. These are his words. This is a man who has access to the science that your politicians don't say anything about. They keep you in the darkness about it. You see, I show no disrespect to Mr. Ingram and Mr. Christie. But in all honesty, if you want to come back and help us, what are you coming back to help us for? When you had the leadership of this country, you didn't speak to the issue of climate change. You didn't speak to the issue of the way in which we build our codes. You didn't speak to the way in which we prepare for post-hurricane disaster. You did none of that. You did none of that. Now you're back into the conversation because you want to be part of the so-called the so-called recovery. Well, I don't understand that. But having said that, the Secretary General indicated the Dorian was unlike previous storms because it was powered by climate change. He also predicted more intense and more frequent hurricanes as a result. Gutierrez said that countries like the Bahamas that do not contribute to climate change, notice he said do not contribute to climate change. There is something known as the carbon footprint. Our carbon footprint in terms of the things that we belch out into the atmosphere are small, tiny, minuscule compared to the carbon footprint by, let's say, the great nations of the West, China, and the United States, and other countries such as those. They are responsible for maintaining the health and wealth of the world's state, of the world's population, the health of the atmosphere. They're the ones who are destroying it most. So what he's saying here is that even though we do not contribute to climate change the way others do, my emphasis, the Bahamas deserves assistance from the international community when they are forced to bear the brunt of disasters fueled by climate change. For the first time, that statement has been made in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, not by a prime minister. What you guys, y'all ain't tired? And you're collecting this big fat pension? Man, take it easy, fellas. Go and have a break, man. Y'all take Christie anytime you want and y'all go take it easy and relax. Not fueled by climate. And by the way, no disrespect intended. No disrespect intended. But I'm entitled to say that the policy initiatives of these two men had nothing to do with preparing for the day which has now come upon us and the conversation they did not want to have. You see, too many politicians are compromised by their relationships with the business community in this country, that they would not wish to speak to climate change as a challenge. Okay? And we're going to go into that in a couple of minutes. So when they are forced to bear the brunt of disasters fueled by climate change, the Bahamas is entitled to assistance. This is the Secretary General of the United Nations. Question: has there ever been one application by the Bahamian government to the United Nations or via CARICOM to make the demand that we should do something about climate change? And that people who live in the global south should be compensated or at least assisted in terms of recovery. Because our economy cannot handle the multi-billion-dollar damage which is now taking place. That blow which hit us in the northern Bahamas. Our economy can't handle that. As much as Guccelli, whatever his name may be, that the Bahamas can take care of everyone, that will punch a massive hole in our gross domestic product this year. Abaco and Grand Bahamas, some say, contribute as much as 25% of our GDP. We've lost Abaco and Grand Bahama to a large extent. Aren't we entitled for this? We must begin to claim it because it is being done to us. So the people of the global south must now be more sensible than just being simple and stupid and turn to things like, oh, it must be the devil. Oh, it must be the Haitian Bahamian fella next door. Or when I was cheering. Oh, it must be voodoo. Oh, it must be obey. That is ignorant, man. That is silly. You will never inform yourself and inform your children better if you continue to rely on reflex, mythological explanations for the challenges you face. You can't keep blaming yourselves, Haitians, because they are us, they're black people. You can't be blaming God or the devil, because that's nonsense. It can be anticipated. The ravages of hurricanes can be mitigated. If we keep throwing up our hands and saying, okay, just go up on the roof and pray to God that we can live, My God, how many more people will die? This reflex that we have of relying upon the superstition, the superstitious, mythological explanations for things in life renders us ignorant and stupid. No disrespect intended. No disrespect intended. But Mother Nature is powerful. In fact, these hurricanes should not be given human names. Let me tell you why. These hurricanes should not be given human names because it assumes that there's something human in their nature. A hurricane is like an animal. It has come to do a job, to cool Mother Earth's core. The seas, the land, the atmosphere. Hurricanes don't come to sit down and cross their legs and have dinner or breakfast with you. Hurricanes are strong. They are powerful. And they have one mandate. We are now enhancing their strength, enhancing their power, and making them more lethal by destroying the world in which we live by climate change. It's very important that the international community learn two things from the example of Abercorn Grand Bahama, the Secretary General said. First, we need to stop climate change. We need to make sure that we reverse the present trend where climate change is running faster than what we have. Gutierrez added, they deserve international support, talking about the Bahamas, to be able to fully respond to the humanitarian emergency, but also for the reconstruction and rebuilding and the rebuilding resilience of their communities in that island. He said the United Nations is working in close cooperation with the Bahamian government. Well, it's now time for Prime Minister Minnis to establish his legacy. And I say this with the greatest respect. Prime Minister, unlike your forebears, you have an opportunity now to set a new paradigm, which is that as part of government policy, tremendous new and creative initiatives should be put in place to anticipate the ravages of climate change, and so forth. One of the aspects in which we will be ready to cooperate, said the Secretary General of the government, is in relation to hurricane shelters. That is probably the biggest need in the short term. But obviously, it would be under the government's direction and the government's leadership. Prime Minister Minnis, you've been given a mandate. Not just by him, but a long time ago, Prime Ministers were given a mandate by our people to protect us from the ravages of these massive storms. And remember now, stop calling them by human names. When the next hurricane comes, ignore the name. Say Mother Nature. Because Mother Nature comes and she ain't sitting down to come have no crumpet and tea with you and to ask you how the kids are. As far as her concerned, as far as Mother Nature is concerned, she's coming to cool the Earth's atmosphere because of the damage that human beings have meted out. She's having to send bigger, more powerful storms. Do not give them. Do not personify them. Do not give them human qualities. Hurricanes are offended when you do that you give them human qualities. Because they ain't coming to sit down and be nice to you. They're coming to do a job, which is to cool the Earth's atmosphere. Take the heat out of the atmosphere. Did you realize how hot the summer was? So much so that when you take a shower at night, with the cold water on, it was still warm. When I was much younger, that was unheard of. Up until recently, that was unheard of. Climate change is real, and climate change is having an impact. I'm not going to go much further, except to say, the Prime Minister you have an opportunity now to establish a new paradigm, and not to be seen to be just a mouth, a talking head. Aside from shelters, we must be creative in the way in which we allow people to rebuild. We should encourage mortgage companies and insurance companies to tell people, listen, invest in solar, invest in stilts, invest in new creative ways of building, and we will invest in round homes, and we will encourage you and give you a percentage off your mortgage over a 30-year period. This is the creativity, Prime Minister, that I would like to suggest is a good way of moving forward. Not the nonsense that you hear coming from these Prime Ministers. They want to be relevant, that they want to help you out. I agree, go tell them raise some money, if that's what they want to do. But to come in and demand, I thought about it and I said to a friend of mine over the weekend, the intervention of Mr. Ingram and Mr. Christie reminded me of the intervention of Bill Clinton, I think, and George Bush in Haiti after was it the hurricane? I think it was the hurricane maybe. Or was it okay. But the two presidents came together. Clinton started a foundation, and all he did was get rich. To the point where his wife could not win the election amongst Haitian Americans because they realized that the foundation was designed to enrich the Clintons, which it did, and not to address the needs of Haiti. I wonder, what are the true motives of these fellows demanding to be part of the so-called conversation? What carve-out is it that they want, which somehow is so appealing to them, for them to literally embarrass themselves on national television? This is what we're talking about. Climate change is bearing down on us, and they want row and fight over foolishness. Man. I wonder if they understand me now a bit more. Because if they understand what I'm coming from the beginning, to understand, oh, that's what this fellow was all about. That's who this fellow was all about. You know, I have made my mistakes in life, but one thing I could not put up with was that kind of slothfulness, selfishness, arrogance that I saw in politicians. I couldn't deal with it. I found it very strange, you know, because the Bahamas is an opportunity second to none. These are men on pensions, living lavish lifestyles, and wow. And yes, that's not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is climate change. So what is climate change? What is climate change? And very quickly, I just want to read something here for you. I think it's going to be helpful. Climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns. In particular, a change apparent from the mid to late 20th century. Did you hear what I said? The mid to late 20th century, the last century, it became apparent that this was going on. Remember, I spoke about the first international conference that dealt with the issue of climate change. From the mid to late 20th century, it became a very live conversation in various levels amongst us. And it contributed this conversation climate change contributes largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by the use of fossil fuels. So we know what climate change is. We have an idea as to what climate change is. And I encourage you guys who are watching the show, watching this presentation, to go and check it out, to see exactly what it is and what it means. It's important that you do that. Because once you do that, then you get the point. Carbon dioxide, fossil fuel use, etc., are lethal, have now reached lethal amounts in our Earth's atmosphere. So much so that it's providing a natural clog against the cooling mechanisms the cooling mechanisms of our Earth and the way Mother Nature operates. So much so that it's causing the water, the seas to actually rise, the sea levels to rise, causing tremendous increase in heat and sea levels, and of course more deadly and more damaging storms. That is where we are today. That was the most important issue of this show today. I'm going to now turn to an issue which is related to that, but not specifically on point. But before I move on, it would be irresponsible of me to just talk about climate change without suggesting this for you. We are now in an existential moment, ladies and gentlemen, because if we do not deal with the question of climate change, it is estimated by 2060, sea levels in the Bahamas will begin to rise drastically. So much so that beaches will begin to disappear. Yes, I used it. I used the word. And I challenge you to go and check me out. Google me. You notice one thing I will not do. I ain't going to talk foolishness. Google it. Sea levels are going to rise so precipitously that they estimate that places like the Bahamas will become more and more threatened by sea level rise. Sea level rise, flooding, and beach erosion. Many of our beaches will begin to disappear. Prime property on the beaches in all parts of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas will begin to lose their value. Listen to me. The tourist miracle that is the Bahamas will lose the very reason for its existence, its beauty, its charm, and its fauna and flora, based upon our geographical position. Ladies and gentlemen, this is real. This is real. This is what, and we have, and I see the producer has one or two, but maybe we can just show you how sea level rise looks like. I don't want to do a video right now, but it's just what it looks like. And there you go. Sea level rise is already taking place in certain parts of Florida. In fact, the way in which they estimate, and of course, that's going to affect Florida. Can you imagine how that is going to affect the Bahamas? Ladies and gentlemen, take this very, very seriously. So it's incumbent upon you now, when a person comes to you, talking about he wants to be your member of parliament or this or that, ask him, what is he doing to mitigate the inevitability of a world that we must bequeath to our children being compromised by greater climate change and sea level rise, sea level encroachment? These are the questions we have to begin to ask. Don't let no PLP, DNA, or F&M come to your door talking horse, you know what, unless they have a plan, unless they intend to give you some relief. We are now bequeathing a country to our kids which is worse than the country that we grew up in. How is that possible? How is that possible? How is that possible? But in the Anthropocene, that is what happened. Mr. Producer, I don't know if we could find that. A-N-P-O-C-E-N-E. A-N-T-H-R-O-P-O-C-E-N-E. A-N-T-H-R-O-P-O-C-E-N-E. Anthropocene, the Anthropocene. It is that epoch, that era in human civilization, which recognizes that up until that time that industrialization, the Industrial Revolution took place, and market fundamentalism spread across the world, the human race and animals on the planet were safe. The human race and animals on the planet were safe. But when we began to belch out carbon dioxide like crazy, and to do the things which damage the ozone level and causes temperature rise across the world over the last 200-300 years, we have taken Mother Nature and we have infuriated Mother Nature. Mother Nature's had to act. And in doing so, to cool the Earth's atmosphere, these new things are happening. What is the Anthropocene? And increase the font first, Mr. Producer, so I can share with the public. And then we're going to deal with something very quickly, and then we'll wrap up. The Anthropocene is considered to be that epoch of human civilization where human beings act for the first time. Human beings, an animal on the planet, has acted to do more in terms of damage to the world in which he lived than to be at peace with the way in which he lives. It's known as the Anthropocene. The two words put together means that epoch when human beings ruled the earth. Because there was a time before when human beings lived in harmony with nature. There was a time when human beings lived in harmony with nature. But after the Industrial Revolution, thereabouts, when we began to use certain chemicals in the atmosphere, when we began to do some strange things in the atmosphere, when market fundamentalism spread across the world, extinctions of animals began to take place. Poisoning of the atmosphere began to take place. Polluting of the atmosphere began to take place. The harmony with which we met our planet was complicated. And all of this took place in the Anthropocene. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to deal with that much further. I may come back to that show at a later time. If you want to find out more about it, 465-0131. If you want to find out more about the kind of things that we're talking about on Fayne Thompson Unfiltered, you can always check our shows out. But that's the Anthropocene. And I'm telling you, sea level doomsday is on its way. Sea level doomsday is on its way. Now, I have to put it that way to frighten you. Sea level doomsday is on its way. It ain't got nothing to do with the Bible. It ain't got nothing to do with the devil. It ain't got nothing to do with Haitians or Obia. It has to do with the destruction which has been wrought by human beings on Mother Nature. Now we're going to take a couple of minutes break. We're going to boot up one or two videos for your edification. So at this time, let's take a quick break. And that song, Mr. Producer, is very, very helpful. Because you know what Clennade Davis really has done for me? She has reminded me of the urgency with which we must now begin to speak and to try to save humanity from itself. Clennade Davis should be given a medal for that song. It encapsulates the pain of our time. And I want to deal, when I turn to the next segment of the show for about 5 to 10 minutes, with something which is a pressing concern to me. That is the rife bigotry which I've observed rear its ugly head in this most difficult time for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I'm going to deal with it. Because some things are happening on social media which frighten me. And I'm going to speak to it. Even though the pastors want to hide, in particular one, I'm not going to call his name, because he's a friend of mine, I'm going to take him on today. I'm going to take on his bigotry. I'm going to take on the bigotry of too many. Bahamians have suffered in the mud, pigeon peas, the farm, and etc., etc. Bahamians. Not just Haitians, but even if they were not just Bahamians, Haitians, human beings have suffered. Legal and illegal. Or legal and undocumented, because no human being is illegal. We'll be right back. Let's take a break. Someone knocked at the door, Dwight. Who was that?
Picture a map of Florida with its long sandy beaches and wetlands, or cities like New York, Venice, and Alexandria, all metropolises with some pretty watery boundaries. Now, try to picture what these might look like in 100 years. The Sunshine State might look very different than it does today. The same goes for Manhattan Island or Mumbai. This is our best guess of a warmer future, one where sea levels are gnawing away at the corners of our carefully drawn maps. Coastal cities are first in line for big changes, and some that can afford it are gearing up to spend billions to make sure they survive.
You might think of the great ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica as giant banks of freezers. And we're running down those rows of freezers, unplugging them.
That's Ben Strauss, CEO and Chief Scientist of Climate Central. They're a nonprofit organization that researches and reports on climate change, including sea level rise. Researchers like Ben have concluded that the world is guaranteed to see 4 feet of sea level rise just based on greenhouse gases we've already put into the atmosphere.
Once we unplug a freezer, it's unplugged. You can't plug it back in, and it's going to melt.
That's pretty scary, especially if you live on a coast. And according to the UN, more than 600 million people live in coastal areas that are less than 30 feet above sea level. And any amount of further emissions will cause sea levels to rise higher, with scientists like Ben expecting a rise of 10 to 20 feet or more. Some coastal areas are already struggling. During some high tides in Miami, water already slides across city streets. This is happening now, and it's a physical sign of rising sea levels.
There are already neighborhoods in the United States that I know about where real estate value has evaporated because floods that used to be rare or non-existent now happen multiple times a year. It's a block here or a block there, but it's really affecting people.
Climate Central created a visualizer called Surging Seas to drive this point home. It shows how coastal cities will fare as the climate heats up. Look at New York, New Orleans, Shanghai, or Lagos, and you'll see how melting ice could push shorelines inland. It's one of a few projects online that are designed to make the threat feel immediate.
I think climate
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed the show so far. Again, it's a focus on the issues of the day. Fayne Thompson Unfiltered. You're not going to hear this kind of show with any of those other fellas or ladies out there because basically they have work on their backsides. They're competing for the commercial dollar. We can't do that because for me to compete for that commercial dollar, which is fine if you want to make a contribution to the show, I am not obliged to echo your views. So in many ways, this is the place for you to come if you want to hear the kind of unvarnished, unfiltered truth. Having said that, there's something else I want to deal with just before we round off in another 10 to 15 minutes. And that has to do with the sadness of our nation and where we are today. And this sadness is derived from something known as bigotry. What amazes me, ladies and gentlemen, is the extent to which Bahamians need to read and to inform themselves and to develop a better appreciation of the history in their background. This country was built not just by Bahamians of English descent, Bahamians of white descent, or mixed Bahamians. This country was built by Haitians. Some Haitians who became citizens after 1973, some who didn't become citizens, and they stayed on this country for all their lives until they were 50, 60, and 70 years old, died in the Bahamas, but they built this nation. What amazes me is the ease with which a black people can begin to blame themselves or parts of their membership, parts of their body, for difficulties which they face in life. Now, some young idiot, and he was a fool, I saw the video, made some comment about his mother and what would happen if we did not deal with the problem of his mother, and if something happens to his mother because Haitians are being treated badly in Abaco. I saw that video. It was sad. But he does not represent the body of people who are the Bahamian Haitian, migrant Haitian, or even undocumented Haitian community at large. He is a very angry man. I also saw another video that sought to incite differences of opinion between the cultural groups known as Bahamians on the one side and Haitians on the other. And before I go on and show you and just read something to you and share some clips with you, let me say this to you. There is no monolith known as Haitian. There is no monolith known as Bahamian. We come from different cultural backgrounds. That's why I established the way in which I established my introduction. We come from different cultural backgrounds. All of us, most of us I should say, including those who were African once and now look white, and those who are white, all of us hail from Mother Africa. Every last one of us hail from Mother Africa. If you don't take it from me, go deal with the anthropologists. They'll establish that. The human race started in Africa. Haiti's biggest challenge was that it had to fight a violent revolution for its freedom. Since then, culture in the Western world, and this is a function of being the victor of the spoils, has demonized Haitian culture because it is an African culture to a serious degree. So much so that we, the majority of black people in this country, too many of us I should say, have embraced the logic of blaming all our problems on Haitians when we can't understand something. Some Haitian did it. A Haitian do it to me. Voodoo is the reason. In fact, Pat Robertson, that ignorant pastor, has gone so far as to say that one of the reasons why Haiti is having the difficulty it is having is because of voodoo. Some people are saying that because of Haitians and voodoo, and Obia, Abaco and the Mud and Pigeon P were struck with the violent force that it meant. That is such errant nonsense. And it is repeated by people who don't read their history, who are ignorant, and who basically have no desire to be curious about the world in which they live. So some will speak about cultural diversity and not recognizing that the culture of the Bahamas is in large part Haitian. I can't understand this. The culture of the Bahamas in large part is Haitian. When I say Haitian, I mean in terms of food, in terms of dress, in terms of speech. Creole is a Bahamian language. People don't understand that. Parts of Long Island, parts of Eleuthera, many parts of the Bahamas, Exuma, were populated by mulatto and white and black Haitians around the time of the revolution. Because of the ignorance of our people, because of the self-hatred of black people, because of racism, which still has a tremendous impact on this country. By reflex, we blame Haitians, Bahamians, Haitian Bahamians, migrant Haitians, and persons who are on here put in residence for everything. And we blame them, they say, with Obia. What we don't realize is Haitians don't practice Obia. They practice voodoo. And some people see voodoo as a very honorable religion all over the world. Only in the Bahamas, this is a small parochial town, do we by reflex decry the religions of other people because we don't understand it. But the point I want to make is that this poisonous attitude that we have embraced towards ourselves, because they are black people, no difference between me and a Haitian, save and except the fact that my people got the boat here, and their people got the boat there. We hate them so much that we have now decided to fan the flames of cultural differences with the agenda of justifying all sorts of things. I've seen people on social media, ladies and gentlemen, talk about something as poisonous as rounding them up. Even the fact that in papers today we see some mention of no building permits being given to rebuild the mud. I can understand the need for sanitary housing, but they have to be housed. They're Bahamians. And some of them, I understand, own property in that area. You can't take their properties away. I saw this thing about building permit, and people don't understand the legality of all of that. You can't take my property and tell me how I get built unless you do it evenly across the board with all people. If you're going to tell Bahamians in a certain area they can't build in a particular way, this new policy should be meted out evenly all over the country. That's what this is all about. So I want to show you, just real quick before we end today, something which I thought I should share with you. Give me some more fun, Mr. Producer. My eyes getting so bad. In short, I saw a video which I am not going to. The producer and I have agreed that we will not put that video up and show that video to try to make some point that it has any merit at all. We have agreed on that, and I thank the producer for reminding me about the inappropriateness sometimes of certain things that we do. So, there is a particular video which is up, and we're going to show you just a flash, and maybe a flash of it, and you may see it. It's just that's one video, and the other one. Okay. Now, this video, let me set the stage for you, was supposed to be pushed into the public domain in the Bahamas, social media, to make the point that Bahamians are killing Haitians, burning them down, leaving men laying down bare, bald naked, burnt to a crisp, as you could see, burnt to a crisp. And this is being sent around by completely and entirely reasonable people, supposedly pastors in this country. I'm not going to call his name. He's a good friend of mine. And I dare him to go publicly on social media to respond to me if he wishes. And when he does that, then I can actually put into the public domain the kind of filth that he sent to me this morning. He sent this to me, and others have said these things in a particular social media group that I was a part of, that this is an example of the kind of violence and terror that these people are going to visit upon us. We are going to have to burn them in the streets, or they have to burn us in the streets. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying some serious things on social media. Let me make it clear. I'm repeating what I've been told. And it's wrong stuff. It's terrible. It's terrible. I decry it. I decry it. But this is the kind of filth that has been put out in the public domain. Now, it is important that I share it with you because one particular person says that I saw the looting. Looting takes place in post-disaster type situations, yes. That'll take place in Nassau, held by Bahamians with an English-speaking background. I hear them saying, now we are all equal and they can't touch us. I saw the video of Senior Customs Officer blank saying how he was held at gunpoint, yet you're surprised to know that I have a view that they are reaping carnage, that they are reaping carnage. Now, some of these people who are referred to as they could be Bahamians, or undocumented aliens, or legal migrants. They all get lumped together. And either they are lawless people, and they should be dealt with. And I agree with that. But to seek to demonize they and them, and use the generic term Haitians, is the evil about which I speak. Because the evil is suggesting that somehow they, them is the reason why we are having problems trying to get Abaco back on his feet. Because of them. This was sent to me by a pastor, a man I have great deal of respect for. And then what he did was he sent videos of something happening in Nigeria, and it was cast by a voice note, and I'm gonna let the producer play the voice note in a second. It was cast by a voice note to reflect how serious this thing is, and it was cast by a voice. Now I want you to listen to the voice note. Listen to the voice note. This is supposedly a voice note of someone who's talking about what's happening to Haitians in the Bahamas. And remember now, it is pure filth, but it's the kind of thing you could listen to. It's not pornographic, that kind of stuff. It's not, but it's serious in its content, and I want to address its content after we listen to it. Mr. Producer.
Yes, good night. How you doing? Everything okay? Yes, this is Haitians in the Bahamas. The Bahamians are killing the Haitians. They say it's the Haitians that caused the hurricane because they're doing too much obia. They're killing people. They're doing bad things. They're devilish. So it's they that caused the hurricane in the island. So they're killing them. The house they put on fire is, I guess, there's where the Haitians and them shelter in. You know, after the hurricane they put them there. So they catch the place fire and thing. They're killing the Haitians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Producer. For those of you who just listened to that, and I want you to, if you get a time, to watch the show twice today. And for those of you who just listened to that filth, that poison, that is exactly what it is. Filth and poison. First, the voice is of a woman who clearly has a strong Jamaican accent. And that person is purporting, I guess, to be a Haitian who's complaining about the fact that Haitians are being burnt to a crisp. You saw the photographs of people burnt and lying on the ground. A photograph, I should say. I didn't show you the video, but that's there. What I'm suggesting to you, we now know that that is all false. We now know that is all false. But Bahamians, unfortunately, are being caught up in the emotion of all this bigotry and hatred, and somehow giving lease to it, and some WhatsApp groups are now talking about taking drastic action to deal with them. Who is them? Who is them? Half of this country is of Haitian descent. Half. Most of you all don't like to deal with it because you hate yourselves. Half of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is of Haitian descent, if the numbers are small. I suspect it may be bigger. Every major Bahamian family name has either a Francis, a Delaveau, a Tricot, one of these French names which clearly ain't come from no France, in their family backgrounds. Poitiers, Darville. Half of us have that Haitian heritage. My family, I'm sure, got it somewhere. The point I'm trying to make is this. It is becoming so dangerous. Post-hurricane, man! Some of you sick people are trying to incite pain between black people. Why? Bahamians of Haitian descent have a right to be mad if they feel as if their services are not being delivered to them expeditiously in a hurricane zone. My God, what's wrong with that? Undocumented alien, undocumented persons have a right to complain. What is wrong with that? We seem to feel that somehow the word grateful should be part of this conversation. As if somehow I should be grateful to you for rescuing me in a disaster. I didn't put a disaster here. It wasn't me, it wasn't voodoo, it wasn't God, it wasn't Satan. The fury of Mother Nature put me in this position. The destruction that we are venting on Mother Nature caused this. That is where the conversation is. We are now mixing up A and B and getting C, D, E, F, and G. Wrongly so. We're at the point of me having to say to my colleagues and friends on social media, man, we got to tone it down, man. Including the pastors who consider themselves having a direct line to the Father above. You're disgraceful if you're inciting this foolishness by trying to send around these ridiculous poisoned voice notes and trying to justify what they do to us. Who's they? You can't talk about a single Bahamian in this country of Asian descent as if they are they, because they're part of you. Oh man. I think the show today has been hopefully instructive enough. I appreciate this format. Fayne Thompson Unfiltered. I want you to support what we do here today. Because we're going to have a different point of view. We can say some things which are going to challenge you. And yes, Pastor, if you want to disclose your name, I'm prepared to take on that conversation online. Because I think what you did by sending that to me was filthy. It was absolutely filthy and wrong. Absolutely unnecessary. It made no sense. None whatsoever. Mr. Producer, what's our numbers? What's our telephone numbers? No, people are watching. They're enjoying it, but they have to decide if they want to comment, I guess, when they get a chance. But, and what number? Oh, there it is. 556-6894. 556-6894. If you have a comment you want to post, please feel free. If you want to share your thoughts, please feel free. If you want to support this programming, you can always contact us at that particular number that I just gave you. We think that this program is important. We want to expand on it. We want to continue with it. We want to formalize it. We want to come into your day. It may be canned. The shows may be canned. That is to say, we may do it at a different time, but in the slot, we'll hopefully post it for you to become accustomed to it. Two things have happened recently. One, the most important man on the planet, aside from your mummies the most important man on the planet, aside from your daddies and your brothers and sisters, their brothers, I should say, came to the Bahamas, and he came for a reason. He came to see. He came to see what this thing was all about. And he went away convinced. Climate change is a clear and present danger to the human race. You hear what I'm saying? We cannot pretend to rebuild in willful ignorance. A good friend of mine likes to say on Facebook, Theosophosis. Willful ignorance we can no longer afford. We have to take it on. We have to take on the challenges of 2019. My children, my grandchildren, no longer have a future that is secured. We did that in the Anthropocene, when human beings began to interfere with Mother Nature and put poison in the atmosphere. We also did something else. Typical former slaves now want to blame each other by mythology and all kind of nonsense. That is why this hurricane came. That ain't true. The science is there for you to understand, for you to read about. The Anthropocene, climate change. Please Google it. And ladies and gentlemen, at this time I pause and I say thank you for allowing me to come into your lives today. God bless and keep safe the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.